From the OUTV Broadcast Center in Los Angeles, California, this is Brief News Brief, a brief look at today's trending news topics. Proudly combating the thought police since 2016, here's your host, James Heaney.
I'm James Heaney, and this is your Brief News Briefing. Today, the Senate began reviewing the FBI's completed report on Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. Meanwhile, the White House is standing by Kavanaugh, fully confident that he will be confirmed. A White House spokesman said that the FBI agents had reached out to 10 witnesses, 9 of whom were interviewed, and that no one corroborated the accounts of Dr. Ford. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has scheduled a vote for Friday. Until that vote, senators will be rushing in and out of a secure facility at the Capitol to review the very sensitive FBI report that the Bureau has compiled, looking into allegations of sexual misconduct against Kavanaugh. Now, my question is, why couldn't they just have this on their computers? Is this more sensitive than anything else that people have ever had to deal with? It just seems so odd that they'd have to go into a room and it's the only place where they can look at this sensitive document, which is inconvenient considering the vote is tomorrow. That's almost as bad as when they dropped the 33,000 pages of papers about Kavanaugh on one day for them to have such a short amount of time to review before the hearings began. Sure, they could still be reviewing these now, but that's a lot of paperwork to have to go in and out of a room in 24 hours. You can't take it home. You can't read it by your bedside. Democrats feel that the FBI report was rushed and too limited in scope. But Trump tweeted around 5 a.m., "This great life can't be ruined by despicable Democrats and totally uncorroborated allegations." The Washington Post reported Wednesday that the White House had restricted the FBI from scrutinizing nominees' drinking habits, as well as possible disparities between the alcohol consumption as a young adult and his accounts when he testified under oath before Congress. Now it's all in the hands of Jeff Flakes, Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski. Those guys are going to say whether or not this guy will be appointed for life to Supreme Court after we clearly heard him telling stories about how he's never lost any memory. He was known for a weak stomach for spicy foods. That's why he was in the Ralph Club. Police! Drunk birds in Minnesota? Well, it turns out the northwestern Minnesota town of Gilbert is alerting residents that the local birds may be under the influence. According to Gilbert police, it's received numerous reports of what looks like drunk birds flying into windows, cars, and acting confused. Why are all these birds drunk? Well, they're not just in some Yale secret society called Truth and Courage. There's a couple of different reasons. Certain berries in the area have fermented earlier than usual due to an early frost that occurred. That, plus the fact that many of the birds have yet to migrate south. This means that more birds are feeling the effects than in past years. These berries always ferment. There's just not as many birds around, and they're also not as fermented so soon. It's the perfect storm for drunk birds in the Midwest. Younger birds' livers can't handle the fermented berries as well as the older birds can. So the police say that these birds should sober up soon enough. Until then, party on, birds. Now, I don't want to make you paranoid, but we've got something that we have to talk about because it's being reported either way, and I think it's true, okay? It's being reported today by Bloomberg's Business Week that China secretly inserted surveillance microchips into servers used by major technology companies. This affects major retailers like Amazon and Apple, but luckily we don't use those things, right? Ugh. The report describes a sweeping, years-long effort, multiple years effort long to install surveillance chips into servers whose motherboards, the brains of computers, were assembled in China. One affected company had its servers used by U.S. government clients, including the Department of Defense, data centers, Navy warships, and even CIA drone operations. But I didn't hear it once mentioned that they were used on Hillary's email servers, so maybe it wasn't such a bad choice if the government's getting hacked by China. But nonetheless, U.S. and China are locked in a bitter and escalating trade war, which hundreds of billions of U.S. and Chinese products are under tariffs. American companies design and sell leading technology products such as servers, laptop computers, and smartphones, but they are built and assembled largely in China. A Chinese military operation run by a unit that specializes in hacking hardware. The maniacal plan works by inserting teeny tiny innocuous-looking microchips onto motherboards and servers produced by China and based in San Jose. Now, Apple's pushing back on the reporting, saying Apple's never found any malicious chips, hardware manipulations, or vulnerabilities purposely planted in any server, but we did self-obsolete our own phones with operating system updates. Today, the Justice Department announced the indictments of 7 Russian military spies on cyber hacking charges. And no, these charges are not related to Donald Trump. I know, mind blown. Not all Russian hacking has to do with elections, silly. These instead relate to the recent doping allegations, or not allegations, it's a full-fledged Olympic doping scandal. Although 3 of the Russian spies were indicted during the summer, when they were, charged for U.S. elections. But that's unrelated to this. It doesn't have anything to do with this completely different investigation. And I'm not sure if you've noticed, though, but this hacking thing, this cheating thing, it's kind of a Russian, they love it. They love to cheat. I'm saying it right now. They cheat at the Olympics. They cheat at elections. If there are high stakes in a competition, Russia's jonesing to cheat their way to the top. Moscow loves to discredit Western democracy. They love to discredit international institutions, and they do it through disinformation and hacking. The British government accuses Russia of hacking athletes' doping records, disrupting subway systems, and hacking into the American DNC. Now, hacking into the American DNC sounds to me related to elections, but it's part of this. Secretary Gavin Williamson, along with Mad Dog Mattis, they met this morning with other NATO leaders and vowed that they were determined to expose the Russians. Expose this whole project. Now, Britain's Foreign Office said today that the Russian military intelligence was behind 6 separate cyber attacks that occurred between the mid-2015 and March 2018. So that's a lot of attacks. Does that mean, I'm not sure I even understand, with all these attacks, does that mean we're at war with Russia?